Well, hello, amazing, gorgeous you. Have you been betrayed? Have you been cheated on? Have you been hurt to the core by someone turning away from you and turning to someone else? We're going to talk about betrayal trauma and why betrayal trauma can undo us. We're also going to talk about how to have healthy relationships, what is in a healthy relationship versus an unhealthy relationship, and what are the steps to betrayal. We can predict betrayal happening in a relationship based on certain steps happening. So you're going to get some real help in this episode of the Whole Life Podcast. We have Chris Cambas on, who's a relationship specialist and therapist. Enjoy. Well, hello, amazing, gorgeous you. Dr. Barbara here, and I have a friend of mine, Chris Cambas, with me, and he is a marriage and family therapist, and he literally trains people in how to do marriage therapy. And we're going to talk to Chris, who is a specialist in couples therapy. We're going to talk to him about relationships that are impacted by trauma. Is your relationship impacted by trauma? Most of ours are. I know that Pastor Tim and I are sometimes impacted by his past trauma and my past trauma, and we work it out. And we work it out through trauma-informed relationship principles and tools. So welcome to the Whole Life Podcast, Chris Cambas.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And I know I'll be seeing you and some members of your team in about 2 weeks. I'll be coming to Charlotte. We'll be doing a training up there.
Yes. Before the podcast, I was telling Chris that I'm coming with about 8 of my team members at my clinical practice, Greenleaf Psychological and Support Services. And we are coming to see Chris, and we're all going to take Gottman Level 1 training. And we love Gottman tools. If you are in a relationship, which most of us are in some kind of relationship, Gottman's tools are really great. And I don't know about you, Chris, but I use Gottman's tools in all kinds of relationships, not just love relationships.
Totally. We use it. We take all the interventions, all the principles, we utilize them in parent-child relationships, friendships, business environments, government environments. The principles are all the same. They're relationship principles.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, let's get right into it because you live and breathe and teach and preach these things. So talk to us about how trauma impacts our relationships.
Yeah, I think a good way for me to approach that is, I deal with couples all day long, every day, about 12 hours a day. What I deal mostly with is affairs, right? And so affairs create post-traumatic stress disorder in the offended party. And so we'll see all the same signs and symptoms, right? Irritability, hostility, difficulty sleeping, anxiety, depression, intrusive thinking, ruminations, homicidal, suicidal ideation, all of these things, right? And so then the question becomes, how do we really recover from that? And how does the relationship, go on to not only survive, but to thrive? And we certainly have the means and mechanisms to support couples in recovery of that. But it's certainly a difficult thing. There's no question about it. But couples do make it through for sure.
Yes. And would you say that the affair is a symptom, or how do you see the affair?
Yeah. So affairs, and I'm generally speaking, right? Affairs are about emotional disengagement, right? Now, this is a very hard thing for someone to hear right on the get-go after, if their spouse has had an affair. And we don't bring that up right on the front end. That's later when we get down into more personalized work on the relationship itself, right? Mm-hmm. But when relationships are good, right, we don't wake up in the morning and go, I think I'm going to sleep with the neighbor. It's just not how it functions. There's a process, right? And it's a long glacial process of emotional disengagement, what Gottman would call turning away, which really reduces the basis of trustworthiness inside of relationships. And it's all the very small things in life, right? So if I was texting on the phone and my wife is speaking to me, right, it's a sliding door moment. I can turn toward her and speak to her, or I could ignore her, turning away. And when we have this, long-standing pattern of turning away, right, when our spouse perceives that, it's just eroding the basis of trustworthiness. And in fairly short order, will betray in some form or fashion, whether that's infidelity or, developing coalitions against our spouse with other people. But betrayal will come, right? Because we just continually increase the distance, right? So
Yeah.
functionally, that's how these things come about. But we don't on the front end, we don't just jump to that, right?
Right.
I mean, we're
I,
looking
I,
at a lot
I
of
love
stuff.
Gottman's work, and I know they partnered with 3 other people. The 24 steps towards betrayal, relationship betrayal, and I think it's the turning away paired with the criticism, like the inner criticism towards the spouse. Those 2 things, and then beginning to look like the grass being greener on the other side. I really love Leslie Vernick's work here. She's a friend of mine, and she does work around destructive relationships in the Christian realm. And I love the way she says having an affair is a character issue, but there are also relationship issues that need to be dealt with. And so it's both. We can deal with the emotional disengagement in different ways, and we can deal with it in disobedience or obedience to the Lord. And then there's the relationship issues that kind of created the fertile ground for it to happen.
Yeah, I would say, listen, I love the Lord, and I could spend every day in a seminary class. So I don't know that I would agree with her that it's necessarily a character issue, right? I think that we're fallen, broken people, and I don't think any of us are Joseph, right? I think we're going to fall short in that realm. And when we read the book by Shirley Glass, Not Just Friends, which is 3 decades of research on affairs, you really come to a realization at the end of the book that like anybody can have an affair, right? And I have folks come in and they'll say stuff like, I would never do that. They look at their spouse and go, relationship didn't feel good for me, but I didn't do what you did. I would never do that. And the reality is they would and they could, right? Given the right set of circumstances, sort of the sun, the moon, the stars line up. So I get the idea, when we talk about character, and character, is built over long periods of time. But I just think that when couples are in relationships, right, and there's this continual turning away, right, over long periods of time, they're going to hang in there and they hang in there and they hang in there. But, we're hardwired to attach, right? And at some point in time, we're going to attach to something. Now, it doesn't have to be to another person. That can be to drugs. It can be to alcohol. It can be to work, church, a million different things. But we do see a lot of times that it ends up, being with another human being. And so I think that where couples go wrong is they don't, along that way, as things are eroding, right? There's no conversation taking place. It's not like, hey, sweetheart, can we sit down and talk a little bit because things aren't feeling well to me, right? And I'd like to, begin to talk these things through. They don't feel safe enough to do that in the relationship, right?
Right.
And so it's going to continue to increase, the distance with it. I think overall character has, a great deal to do with our lives, right? And we're building it as we go along. We build it out of our devotion to God. I just think at, times we can fall short, like David, right? Who's a guy after, God's own heart. So I think
Thank God for grace, right? Thank God for grace. I know I've had a season in my life where I went through a serious betrayal, very serious. But actually, my husband had an affair, and left me with 2 little kids. And I remember making a bad decision in a relationship, and then getting out of it. And when I realized what I was doing, but realizing, oh my gosh. Yeah. And I did get a huge revelation of grace in the middle of that. But it's interesting. Sometimes we do think we're stronger than what we are.
Oh, absolutely.
I am very grateful for grace.
Listen, if there wasn't grace, we'd all have some serious problems, right?
Yeah.
So definitely grateful for the grace side of it.
Yeah.
I think what's important for people to know, we have these affairs, right? And so PTSD is created in our spouse. And so what the question is, how do we recover from that, right? How do we get out of there? And from a recovery perspective, we would say, look, we need complete confessions that are going to stop at a bedroom door, And the reason we stop at a bedroom door is because we're adults. We know what happens on the other side of a bedroom door. And to go into explicit sexual detail will exacerbate the PTSD and probably limit the couple's sexual life moving forward.
Mhm.
It's like you did that with him or her. I'm not doing this. And so it's important to get a complete confession and get it all out in one shot, right? Because if it's just kind of dribbling out, we continue to re-traumatize the person. Not to mention, they're going to get to a point where they're not going to believe you at all, right? You told me last time I had all the information. So we want to get a complete confession that'll stop at the bedroom door. We're looking for a behavior change, transparency, verification. I'm going to change my behavior. I'm going to be transparent down to the point of verification. And then we go for we get a question answered. And that question is, why are you coming back to me?
Mhm.
Right? It can't be, well, because of the kids. It's no, why are you coming back to me? Because you had an affair, you left me.
Yeah.
So why are you coming back to me? And the fourth part, we will look at exacting high price for future betrayal and betrayal of any kind. If you tell me you're a shop and go and you're 2 miles down the road at 7-Eleven, we have a significant problem.
Yeah.
Right? And then we really start taking looks structurally at what could in the world could have been happening in the relationship for one or both that could have created an environment where something like this could even be possible. That makes sense?
Yeah. So the turning away that happens in the first place, would you say that there is often attachment issues or childhood trauma issues underneath a lot of that?
I think it certainly can be. Right? It doesn't have to be in every incident, but I think it certainly can be. When there's a lot of childhood trauma, people will become, they'll live more inward, right? They're not securely attached, right? They're insecurely attached, right? So they're dismissive, avoidant, or they're, all other types of forms of attachment styles. But the issue becomes they don't attach, right? So they can be unknowingly, right, turning from a Gottman perspective, turning away in these small moments that make or break relationships, right? And then they find themselves only sort of reinforcing why relationships aren't safe.
Yeah.
It becomes sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah. I know that sometimes if we have a withdrawn attachment style, we're always looking for that just right person, but never finding it. But it's really, hard to we're having a hard time attaching. So how do we heal our insecure attachment within a relationship before an affair happens or after?
Yeah. It's a great question. And I think that when people come to therapy, they need to understand it's not just this matter of sitting down and just having conversations. It's a very educational thing, right? So if we're going to talk about attachment, right, we're going to have to understand attachment. We have securely attached people. We have, under insecure attachments, we have dismissive avoidant. We have avoidant, right? We have these various types of attachments. So we have to figure out which one is us, right? And what that is, so we can define it, right? Here's what this attachment style is. But we also have to understand what securely attached, what a securely attached person looks like. And then we set in motion things that are going to create an environment with their spouse, right, to really foster an environment where they can slowly but surely move into, secure attachment, right? And it's a process. We're almost talking about not really literally changing people's personalities, but really changing, their approach to how they do relationships, which is going to require them to be more vulnerable, which is the exact thing that they don't want to do.
Well, let's say we have two people who are maybe mostly securely attached, but occasionally either anxious or withdrawn, or one person's anxious, one's withdrawn. And we want to prevent an affair. We want to prevent an emotional turning away. Talk to us about the structure of a sound relationship.
Yeah. So whether it's securely attached people or insecurely attached people, what we do want them to know is what makes relationship great, right? Mm-hmm. And so we've got 50 years of research on it, 50 years of filming couples in the lab. So it's not a mystery to us what great couples are doing versus, the masters versus the disasters. And so I'll walk you through the different floors of the sound relationship house. And this really lays the framework for, how to have a really successful relationship. Mm-hmm. And so this is all Dr. Gottman's work. He was on staff at Indiana State University about 50 years ago, and we could predict with maybe 8 or 9% accuracy where couples would end up. So a really bad number, right? And he knew we didn't have the data, so he didn't want to come up with a theory. He said, "I'm going to turn the cameras on and let them roll, and see if patterns develop." So Indiana State created a lab. It was just an apartment at that time until NIH started funding it $100 million a shot, right? And they built a huge place at the University of Washington. Well, couples would come in for 24-hour periods. They'd be filmed 9 in the morning till 9 at night, and facial coding systems applied, and we can tell people's emotions through facial expression, heart rate monitored, blood pressure monitored, blood velocity monitored. They would draw people's blood and check their immune system, and urinalysis done, all kinds of measurements. But about 2 years in, he was able to predict divorce with 94% accuracy, and really kind of do that in 5 minutes watching couples argue. And all he needed to see was 4 things, right? 4 simple things. That was criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. And when we see those even today, when those are present in relationships, we know that's a 94% probability that relationship will end without intervention, right? Now, the great news is filming people for 50 years, you not only see the bad, you see the good, right? So we have antidotes. We have cures for each one of those, right?
Would you mind talking about stonewalling for the audience and let them know what that is?
Sure. So stonewalling is sort of when we get to the end of an argument, right? We're not talking anymore. We'll look away. There's not eye contact. You might see people looking down. They're completely disengaged, right? And so stonewalling is an attempt to self-soothe. It just doesn't work. The physiology is continuing to rise, right? So the cure for stonewalling is really teaching people how to physiologically self-soothe, right? Calm their system down, get the frontal lobes working again, allow enough time for the adrenaline and cortisol to get through their kidneys and into their bladder and be able to come back and have rational conversation.
Yeah. I look at stonewalling as kind of shutting your heart down in that area and little by little pulling up the moats. Oh, I'm never going to talk to you about that subject again, to where that you start to just disengage completely.
You just in the argument, right? The person just stops. They're just disengaged. They look away. Again, no eye contact. They're done. They're out, right? They're flooding at that point. And matter of fact, I mean, they could not only be flooding, but they could be in a state of what we call diffuse physiological arousal, where kind of all systems are activated, meaning all of, all the different emotions have their own autonomic signatures, right? So I could be angry, right, and flood, but that doesn't mean I'm in diffuse physiological arousal. When people hit DPA, all these autonomic signatures, are triggered. Right. And it's just this overwhelming sense like you need to get out of your skin. Right. Mm-hmm. So the cure is going to be the same for all of them. Right. We're going to teach people how to physiologically self-soothe. Right. Mm-hmm. Or
take a 15-minute break and then come back, but the key is to keep coming back.
Yeah. So if we take people and we give them a magazine to read for 15 or 20 minutes, right, it's going to keep their frontal lobes working. Right. Takes logic and reason to read, and it's going to allow enough time for that adrenaline and cortisol, the stress hormone, to work its way down in the bladder and have no effect.
Yeah.
So that's really stonewalling, right? So the 4 horsemen, as John would call them, the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse are criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. And then we look at the sound relationship itself, and so the 2 walls are commitment and trust, right? And so commitment would be, I'm completely emotionally invested in this relationship, and this is my journey for life, come what may.
Yeah.
And those are 2 astronomical statements.
Yes.
Right. I read this article about the universe a couple months ago, and it said from planet Earth to the edge of the universe is 95 billion light years. Right. And I don't even know what that means, but it's huge. And
yes.
That's the size of commitment when we get into marriage, right? It's just a vast thing, So I'm completely emotionally invested. This is my journey for life. And marriages never begin. They never start. They never even get the engine going until couples stand on the edge of planet Earth, look into 95 billion light years, and settle in and go, yeah, like you're my girl and you're my guy, and I'm in. Mm-hmm. Not until that happens does a marriage begin. Right. And as all the time we're living out here without that happening, we're actually committing a form of betrayal that we call conditional commitment.
Mm.
Right? I haven't settled into the idea that this is my journey for life. So that's one wall. And then we have a trustworthiness wall, right? And the fundamental thought there is with the masters of relationship, they have a heartfelt sense that their spouse not only has their own best interest at heart, but theirs as well, right? And that's glacially slow to get there. And we'll talk about how to get there. We differentiate between trust and trustworthiness.
Mm-hmm.
I trust if someone walked into my office and started beating on me right now, you would do something. You might scream and holler, might call my office, etc. Right? So this is a very low bar. Trustworthiness, best we can pin it down, takes like 15 to 25 years to create.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And it's built in all these small moments of turning toward, right? And we're never going to be perfect at it, but it really needs to be the trend line over this vast period of time, right? Mm-hmm. So our walls are commitment and trust, and then the floor, the base. And remember, we're talking about how to develop a securely attached relationship. So we're going to work on the antidotes for the four horsemen, and we're going to build the sound relationship house. We have walls of commitment and trust. The foundation of the home is what we call love mapping. And the thought there, the idea there is really knowing one another's worlds, right? This is beyond how was your day. This is stuff like, you're standing at your grave looking at your tombstone, right? Your epitaph. Or, what's your mission statement for life? Things like this, where, these real probing questions. When you watch these couples on film, it's like a tennis match, right? They're just volleying these open-ended questions back and forth, really spending time, getting to know one another's internal worlds. So that's the first floor. Mm-hmm. And then the second floor of the sound relationship house is what we call sharing fondness and admiration. And in fondness and admiration, with the masters of relationship, they're really, really good about finding good. And then they speak it, right? It's never enough to just find it. We have to find it and then speak it. And that really becomes the cure for contempt, right? And contempt is the number one predictor of divorce.
Yep.
We would define it as any time in any domain where we're speaking down to our spouse, right? That's contempt. So you'll see belligerence, profanity, mockery, rolling the eyes would be a facial coding system. It just really relays disgust and hatred. But here's the interesting thing. Dr. John he researched contempt for 10 years. And one of the things that they found out was the number of contemptuous statements spoken in a 15-minute interval accurately predicted the number of infectious illnesses the receiver of contempt got over the next 4 years.
Whoa.
Yeah,
do you think forgiveness, the forgiveness research has to tie into that as well?
For sure, right? And forgiveness is just this whole other amazing topic, right? And the idea of forgiveness being about us and not our offenders and the physical health benefits, right, of living in a state of unforgiveness. Because we're in a state of unforgiveness. Our systems, everything from our circulatory systems to our musculoskeletal system, a lot of systems are being wrecked, right? Mm-hmm. So certainly forgiveness is going to play a part where there's been a lot of contempt in relationships.
And then there's the life and death in the tongue. Wow.
No question.
Amazing.
Right? Absolutely no question. When I think about the scriptures and, life and death lying in the tongue, I think about the four horsemen, right? Criticism, contempt, offensiveness, and stonewalling. You'll hear people say a lot of things, and they're degrading, right? This is contempt, right? They're very vicious type things. And so that's the idea behind contempt. And in the labs, what they would do, they would put indwelling catheters in people, and they would measure their immune systems during conflict conversations, and they could just see their immune systems being degraded and wiped out, right? So it's a big deal. It's a super big deal. So the second floor is really sharing fondness and admiration, where they really are good at finding the good, right? And then they speak it. It's not going to be enough for us to just find it.
I think it's also important to speak it in their language or in their love language. Like I might want to hear, "Oh, I love you so much, and you're the best, and I just totally get you." That's not what my husband wants to hear. He wants to hear, "I appreciate you so much. I admire and respect you so much." So when I feel like I want to say to him, "Oh, I just love you so much," I try to put it in his language.
Yeah, totally. I think that, we all receive and hear love in various ways. And I think that we can certainly make it a point to deliver fondness and appreciation and love in ways that our spouses can notice it and recognize it.
Yeah.
We want them to be able to do that. We don't want it to be like ships passing in the night. What needs to be met.
Yeah.
So,
okay. So we're on floor 2. So now we're going up to number 3.
Yeah. Floor 3 is turning towards versus turning away,
Mm-hmm.
right? When we're turning towards, we're building the basis of trustworthiness, right? Inside of a relationship. When we're turning away, or I perceive my spouse as turning away from me, right? It erodes the basis of trustworthiness, and that's where betrayal is birthed.
Mm-hmm.
And so clearly we have infidelity, but we've got conditional commitments to relationships, breaking sacred vows and promises, withholding needs, spiritual, physical, emotional abuse, lies, deceit, developing coalitions against your spouse with other people, etc. But the big point to know is that betrayal is birthed from a turning away, meaning I'm turning away, or I perceive that my spouse is turning away from me.
Yeah.
Right. So, but those first 3 floors, love mapping, sharing fondness and admiration, and turning towards, are your friendship system.
Ooh, that was some real talk, but so helpful. And if you want more wholeness in your life, if you want to go deeper in your own healing, your own wholeness, if you have trauma, whether it be betrayal trauma or PTSD or childhood trauma, we have something that will help you. Go to drbarbareau.com/book a call, and we can talk to you about options for your own personal wholeness plan. Our team will love you, will pray for you, and we're going to help you to find your way to the plan that works best for you and your situation. So go to drbarbareau.com/book a call, and make sure you're on my email list. Go to drbarbareau.com/contact. I love you so much. You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram and all those places. And we're always here to encourage you, help you heal from trauma, and equip you to heal the trauma sick. I love you, and I'll see you next week with part 2 of this podcast, where we're going to look at how to heal after he cheated.